Oh, it's pouring with rain out there. I'll have another sip of coffee before we get started. Well, it really is raining out there. It's about 2 degrees as well. Right, there's no putting it off. Bit of a strange way into this mark. It's quite a tricky access to this place. Oh, bend down. About 4 foot off the ground now. It's a bit tricky when you're over 6 foot. Almost there, you can see the sea in a minute. Shells being washed up on this section of beach, look at that. This is after the last storm and the big tide. Now it looks quite featureless out there, but I do know there are patches of rocks, sand, shingle. The question is, can I remember what's where? I mean, ideally here I want to be casting onto sand near the obstructions, but I'm going to cast into the wind. That's the wind coming right at us. The wind's coming right at us that way, and I want to be casting there in between. There's rocks actually about there, I think. And check, you get some clues from the surf. Obviously where it's breaking is where it's shallower. Haven't even started fishing and I'm filthy. So we've got the 125 lead, and then got these size 4s. So a 2-hook cascade swivel with the bottom hook always going onto that breakaway there on that lead clip. So obviously when that hits the water, that pushes that hook off. Firm up the worms. All these rigs I've just had made have a stop knot and a sequin that stops that worm flying off the hook. Sometimes I leave the tail on, sometimes I just pinch it off. Two rods set up then. So on the one on the right, well, we've actually got lug on both. It's always, your eyes are sort of drawn to that rod on the left, but I think we're getting little knocks. You see the rod on the right just tapping away, isn't it? Could be a whiting. Hopefully it's that flatfish we want. Let's have a look. Quite tricky because these rocks are vicious. Well, whatever it was came off. We're obviously getting a bite on the Synetic. You can see how much easier it is to see the bites on that one. Fishing two different types of rods here really. So you've got the multiplier on the right, that's the Sandstorm, and the Synetic Continental lightweight on the left. And it's actually that Sandstorm's not bad at all. Pretty good for a second-hand rod, that one, 50 odd quid. There's something snagged on the rock as I was bringing it in, so I'm going to have to go down. Short, that was really worth it for two tiny little whiting. Oh. Right, a hell of a tangle. To be honest, it wasn't very deep there where that wave was breaking. Always a danger of slipping on the rocks though. It's one advantage of having a spare rig ready to go. Just stick that one back on. And off it goes again. That's a good thing about these more lightweight rods like this Synetic. More inclined to sort of feel for the bites. Maybe reel in a little bit, lean into it. Especially with braid, you can tell what's coming. Unfortunately, again, on this occasion, guess what? Another whiting. Well, I don't want to be plagued by whiting. No, I'll tell you what, we'll put on some squid. And then playing it on with a very different rod, the Sandstorm. But again, it's whiting. A little bit bigger this time, I suppose. I guess I should be a little bit more optimistic about these whiting. They do make quite good eating apparently. Haven't quite got one big enough today so far. So even more whiting. I should be grateful at least for catching something, but I suppose the story here is how do you not catch whiting? And other than not going fishing at all, we've put the squid on the other rod. That might be an option, but I think we just have to keep trying to fish through them. Just hope there's a flatfish fast enough to get the bait instead of them. But to be honest, they're pretty prolific today, aren't they? And now it's starting to rain again, because I live in hope that one day there'll be a fish on there that's not a whiting. Coming up to high tide now. Always find when you get that little bit of slack water at high tide, fishing tends to ease off even for the whiting. I don't really want to be fishing here into darkness, it's too slippery. Going to lose some of the gear as well, I should imagine. Because we're getting lots of rattles on the bigger bait. Unfortunately, I think that is whiting still. The bait's somewhere totally different now. There's a little gully out that way. I've had a small bass before there, so let's give that a go. Hopefully something other than a whiting. Stay tuned, could be more whiting. So the question still needs to be answered then. How do you stop catching whiting? Well, one, it should be grateful really that I can go fishing, I think, but well, live baiting, of course, using a whiting itself is an option. Bigger baits as well. Changing where you're casting, maybe you want to cast short, although as we find out later, even just dropping it in front of these rocks, there's still white in there. You can always move venues. Very fast running tide, it might stop them a bit. So one of the few interesting things about a whiting is just check alongside it to see if there's any marks that have been left by a conger or a bass. The conger leaves a very V-shaped mark on there. The bass will sort of rip its head off, big gulp. But the ones we're getting here, they don't even have the conger marks on them. Earlier in the year, or at least in autumn, we were finding sort of 1 in every 5 had some sort of damage on it, but these ones haven't been. not a great sign for those of us that want a conger or a bass. Our little clues then, we just brought this one in. This had squid all packed on it. It's been twisted and twisted. I'd imagine hasn't been twisted by a conger. That is unfortunately whiting, just hammering it. There'll be loads and loads of whiting around it. Let's put the same thing out again, see if we can get something else. I'll keep saying that. If this is another whiting, I'll end the video. Things do get better, as you'll find out in next week's video. But thanks very much for watching, and as always, please do subscribe if you're not already, and click that bell icon as well, because then I can try and keep you up to date with what's being caught when it's not whiting. Thanks very much for watching.